In this world of so much negative news, we need inspiration. Be Inspired is created for appreciative audiences just like you. So please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any of our upcoming inspiring stories.
And by the time they were done, I was moved to tears. And one of the things that they said at the end of the video was that they were trying to start this foundation and they wanted to do more speaking and all these other things. And I felt like they were talking to me.
Be Inspired podcast. Real stories from real people. Sharing stories of love and loss, struggles and perseverance, laughter and tears, and overcoming adversity.
Well, some years ago, 3 young men made a pact. They would stay together, they would work hard to be successful, and they would give back to the community that they grew up in. Today on Be Inspired, we're going to learn about the incredible story of the 3 doctors and the 3 Doctors Foundation. Hi, I'm Bert Baron.
And I'm Lisa Anderson.
And welcome to Be Inspired. This season of Be Inspired is made possible by IgA Nephropathy Foundation. Lisa, it's an amazing story of the 3 doctors, how 3 young men made an agreement at a very young age. They would work hard, they would succeed, but they would never forget about their hometown. And they would always want to be able to give back and provide mentorship and provide inspiration for those who grew up facing similar challenges. And it's really an incredible story that we're going to learn today.
It is. And it's one thing to make pacts when you're young. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's another thing to see them through, which doesn't always happen. So this is awesome.
Through the work of a foundation and a great scholarship program, the 3 Doctors Foundation continues to have a positive influence on families and children everywhere. And we're so honored to welcome Wendy White, the executive director of the 3 Doctors Foundation, to the Be Inspired podcast set today. Welcome, Wendy. Good to have you here.
Thank you so very much. Glad to be here. Pleasure.
My relentless pursuing finally paid off.
Absolutely.
Because I always wanted you here to tell the incredible story of the 3 Doctors Foundation. Just 3 incredible guys who provide so much inspiration to so many people who really beat the odds.
Yes. The 3 doctors are from my hometown, Newark, New Jersey. And their story really is one of friendship, hope, and determination. Sam, George, and Ramik met when they were in high school. And one of the things that was very important to them was that they were able to stick together, as you mentioned, and really beat a lot of the odds that a lot of young people face, especially with regards to the struggle of growing up in the inner city and growing up during a time when it was very difficult for young men, especially young men of color without fathers, and young men who, like a lot of young people, made some missteps. If you know the story of the 3 doctors, you know that 2 of them even got in trouble with the law. One, Ramik, was arrested for attempted murder. And it was an incident where he was with some friends. He made a choice of, beating up someone, and they got hurt pretty bad. And fortunately, though, the person was not hurt so bad where he was able to, especially because of his age and because of the scenario, not have that determine what his future was going to be going forward. Sam also got in trouble with the law by, unfortunately, there was a situation where he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But regardless of those things, the 3 doctors were able to come together and recognize that even with not having fathers in their lives, even with growing up very poor, that being physicians was something that they could actually do and accomplish because they were very smart young men. And ultimately today, they are doctors. Samson is an ER physician in Newark, New Jersey. George is a DMD, he's a dentist at Columbia University in New York. And Ramik is an internist at Princeton Medical Center, where he also has a wonderful obesity program, so he's making all the COVID people skinny now. So, yes.
Have to go see him.
Yes.
Yes. First of all, I worked in Newark for years and grew up in Elizabeth. Yeah. But what I want to find out is their moms. You said grew up without fathers.
Yes.
What influence do you think their moms, their families had on, keeping them?
I think it was their mother's promotion on education. One of the things that Sam, Dr. Davis talks a lot about is how his mother kept saying, listen, go to school, go to school, go to school. Even though, and he talks about it in his book, that his mother didn't go to school. She couldn't read. And she grew up during a time where it was about working and making sure you provided for the family and doing the best that you could in terms of hard work. But she recognized the power of education. So having that message planted in his mind was something that helped him to understand what he needed to do. George especially, if you know the story, because of that same message from his mom, he was primed for an experience that would change his life and really is what started the Pact. When he was a young man, he needed braces. And so he went to the dentist, and the dentist that he went to actually took the time to be very thoughtful around explaining the process and the procedures. And so George, because of his mom priming him in terms of education, thought, wow, it must be cool to be a dentist. Yeah. And so, when the opportunity presented itself, he talked to his two friends and said, hey, given all these things that we've gone through, let's be doctors. And so as kids, they were like, all right, let's do it.
Okay.
And so you have the three doctors today. So that seed that was planted by their moms was extremely important, having strong mothers and mothers that even if they themselves don't have that level of education, even if they themselves have struggled, having them stress the importance of education was very important.
Yeah,
So.
I think it makes it more so.
Absolutely.
Because they know. And sometimes it takes just that one little thing like the dentist.
That's it.
To just, put that seed in your mind and wow, that was a really cool experience.
When you do something good for someone and you see where they take it and they go with it and
Absolutely.
they use it as a means of giving back to people, it's really special.
Sure.
Wendy, I've seen videos and pictures of these events where they get together in
Yes.
schools, and it's just people just go crazy, and they get to see the doctors, and it's a very inspirational thing. What is the message typically that the three doctors try to convey if they're in a room or an auditorium filled with young people? What do they try to impress upon them?
It's a lot of what we've talked about in terms of education. You'll hear the doctors say education saved their lives, because especially all of the friends that they had growing up didn't necessarily take the same path. So they recognized that by going to school, getting their education, their journey was different. Their lives were very different than what it would have been had they not gotten education. But the thing that they've talked about collectively has been kind of the core of our foundation, which is HELM, HELM, health, education, leadership, and mentoring. So it's very important to the doctors, one, because they're physicians, that people maintain their health. Education, obviously, as we've talked about, and leadership and mentoring in the way that help them along their journey, something that we call positive peer pressure. Every year we do a positive peer pressure challenge because the thing that we recognize with the doctors is that they had each other.
Yeah.
That they're people who become doctors every day, but having friends who are with you along the way, friends who support you, friends who encourage you, and friends who have similar struggles and challenges was very important to their journey. So the thing that they always try to stress amongst young people is it's okay to have peer pressure, just make it positive.
That's a good idea. It's one thing to succeed, but it's another, to give back.
And those 4 items could be the cornerstone of any successful community where everyone supports one another and everyone strives to succeed. I mean, you covered it all right there. Health, education,
leadership,
mentorship. Yeah. And if every community just embraced those principles, it's just amazing what people would be able to achieve.
Absolutely.
It's really great.
For sure. Looking back, Wendy, when the doctors were growing up, how does that compare to the youth of today?
Sure. I think there's some similarities as well as some differences. I think similarly, they also struggled with paying for college, which, as you mentioned, is astronomical right
Crazy.
now.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that was helpful for them was they went through a program at Seton Hall. It was a pre-med, pre-dental program that allowed them to have some subsidy to some of their financial challenges. But I do think that the thing that young people have that they didn't have was a lot of the technology now in terms of researching some of the financial aid that may be available. But I do think that those struggles still exist in terms of, growing up in poverty, fatherlessness, the drug problem that's going on right now.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of young people that may be out there who, in the case of Ramik, for example, both of his parents had challenges with drug addiction. And he talks about that in the book. And there's a lot of young people out there right now that may have that scenario and may think that perhaps that's all their life is going to be.
Right.
But that's why the doctor's story in their book is so powerful, because it's touched a lot of lives. There's a lot of young people who recognize that, hey, if he had that scenario and that was the case of his parents, and he's able to be this phenomenal doctor now at Princeton Medical Center, then perhaps there's something more for me.
They can relate.
Absolutely.
Totally. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's key.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
want to talk about the great work of the foundation and how it continues to pay it forward. But since you brought up the books, why don't we talk about those? You brought a couple with you here today. Sure, yeah. And what do they hope to accomplish? Is it their story? Is it inspirational stories? What do the books hope to accomplish?
Yeah. Well, actually, the Pact was the first book that the doctors wrote, and it really kind of spiraled organically as they continued to tell their story. Kind of like the Be Inspired program. It's touching the lives of people and not even realize that you're doing it. They started talking to people about some of their struggles and how they became doctors, and that ended up resulting in them being on the front page of the Star Ledger newspaper when newspapers were a thing. Yeah. And they had their pictures of them graduating and how wonderful it was that these friends bonded together and became physicians. And ultimately, other people got wind of it and they were asked to write a book. And they thought, okay, well, we'll write about our story, so what? And the book ended up becoming a New York Times bestseller. Wow. And from that, they did a documentary. And from that, a lot of the schools in the communities across the country started to adopt their book as a part of their curricula. And then ultimately, because this book tells the raw story, if you will, a lot of middle school and teachers of younger children said, hey, do you have something that's not as, raw, if you will? So they wrote We Beat the Street, which is the children's version of the Pact. And again, a lot of teachers are still using their books and their story to really inspire young people from all walks of life, not just inner city, not just, on the East Coast. I've traveled with the doctors now for 20 years, and their audiences have been in the thousands, and they've also been, in maybe 10 or 20 people. But it's still inspiring nonetheless. Kids are certainly inspired by the fact that they're these doctors now, but they're also asking them for their autographs, which is awesome to see,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wendy, what does this do for you? You said you're involved for 20 years
Yes.
with the organization. What drew you to it, and what does it do for your life?
One of the things, well, first I'm from Newark, New Jersey, proudly so.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that happened very early on in my life was I had a sister addicted to drugs. And the struggle of that and the impact of that on our family was quite significant, as you can imagine. Yeah. And especially because at the time she has 2 children, 2 boys. And, that created a scenario where myself and other family members had to step in. And during that time, I had to, like a lot of people, balance going to work every day and putting on a positive face and being strong, if you will, and then coming back home to the realization of what was happening in the family. And I was looking for, like a lot of people, something to motivate me, something to inspire me, and something to keep me going. And I just happened to read in Essence magazine, when magazines were a thing, this little article that they wrote about the doctors. And they were just starting out. They had just graduated medical school. And I thought, what a lovely story, of these guys that had each other and grew up in Newark, my hometown, and they were doctors. And I felt uplifted after reading the story.
Sure. It's awesome.
And at the time, the company that I worked for wanted to have a guest speaker for some big event. And I just happened to mention to someone who worked there, I said, it would be nice to have, I read about these 3 doctors. And she said, oh, I know they're one of their moms or something. And I was like, really? So she gave me the telephone. And she's like, here, call him. I was like, so she's just giving the number. And, so I called and left a message, and he called back. And I said, yeah, speak at the event. And they were like, sure. So then I passed them off to the person that was coordinating the event, and they spoke. But I missed the opportunity to see them speak. Oh. But when I came back to work, everybody was so excited. They were like, oh, those doctors were great. And then I felt bad. I was like, wow, I missed the opportunity. I was inspired by the article, but I missed the opportunity to see them speak live. And I kind of mentioned it to a friend of mine who happened to work in the video production department, not as fancy as what we have today. And he said, oh, I taped it if you want to see it, And I was like, oh, yes, I do. So he handed me a VHS. And for you kids, that's streaming.
When they were a thing.
Yes, when they were a thing. And, I brought the tape home, and it took a while and for me to watch it. I just kind of put it to the side and thought, I'll watch it at some point. And one day, I had nothing to do for the most part, and I turned the lights down low and I watched the video. And by the time they were done, I was moved to tears.
Wow.
And one of the things that they said at the end of the video was that they were trying to start this foundation, and they wanted to do more speaking and all these other things. And I felt like they were talking to me. And I said, I still had the number. So I just called and I left a message and I said, if you guys need, I know that you want to do some stuff. If you need some help, let me know. And they called back. And even though we all grew up in Newark, New Jersey, I did not grow up with the doctor. So they didn't know me. They didn't know who I was. I was just this strange lady on the phone. But they agreed to meet with me. And I agreed to meet with one of them. And it was Sam. And Sam said, okay, I'll meet you down in Newark somewhere. And so he shows up and he says, I was talking to Ramik. And he said he's coming. I was like, all right, well, he can come on. And then Ramik shows up. He said, I was talking to George, and he said he's coming too.
There's that pact again.
Yeah, and so I found myself, sitting at the table, and it was a table about the size of this one. It was very small, kind of knee to knee with these three guys, and we started talking about the similar challenges of balancing, the life that you want and the life that you're trying to create, while at the same time trying to manage these extreme scenarios of, a sister on drugs, parents on drugs, poverty, not having a father, and being the first one to graduate from college, and being the first one to, own a property or try to move ahead of everyone else in the family, but at the same time support your family and pull them along the way. And what we could possibly do to help other people that perhaps, whether they were in that scenario or not. And from that conversation, I remember Ramik turned to me and he said, will you be our executive director? And I said, sure. But I didn't know what that meant.
Okay.
I was like, it sounds important. So I guess I'll figure it out. And I had never run a foundation before.
Wow.
I didn't know these guys, and I ended up getting a couple of speaking engagements for them. So I ended up on a plane with them and traveling the country. I was like, I'm traveling the country with strangers, but we became fast family. And for 20 years, I've had the pleasure of hearing their story over and over and over again, and it never gets tired. Ever.
That is a great story.
Yeah.
I love how things happen organically.
It really
like that.
is.
You were in the right
Yeah.
place at the right time,
Absolutely.
and they're lucky to have you.
And so many things, Wendy, that the foundation continues to do, a terrific scholarship program that people can learn about, and just speaking appearances and the books, and so many things that are going on. Where can someone go online to learn a lot more about the foundation?
Yes. They can go to 3doctors.com. So 3 is spelled out. Doctors is also spelled out in plural.com.
And I want to wrap up with a quote from Oprah Winfrey, if I can.
Yes.
The doctors appeared on her show, and Miss Winfrey saying, "You guys are bigger than rock stars. I think you guys are the premier role models of the world." And it puts into perspective the people that are making real differences in
Yes.
communities across the country.
Absolutely.
And you're a great representation of them in the foundation. It's really wonderful to have you
you.
with us here today.
Thank you so much.
I'm Bert Baron,
And I'm Lisa Anderson.
and thank you for watching Be Inspired.
My name is Wendy White. I'm the Executive Director for the 3 Doctors Foundation. And I'm here today on the Be Inspired podcast to give back to all those people who've inspired me.
Next on Be Inspired.
My whole life I wanted to be a Marine. The Marine Corps was excellent. Taught me a lot about adversity and just overcoming obstacles. I had a really bad form of dysentery right after an IED blast. You're not gonna stop because your tummy hurts. When I woke up, I didn't realize I'd lost my legs. I couldn't see, I couldn't talk. I was just overheating and I was like hallucinating. They were told like, hey, pray for the best, expect the worst. So my Marines came in. Yeah.
Be Inspired with your hosts, Bert Baron and Lisa Anderson Puleo. Directed by Rod Weber. Created and produced by Michael R. Doyle. Co-producers, Bert Baron, Lisa Anderson Puleo, Rebecca Gruber, and Erwin Sternberg. Executive producers, Rod Weber and Sean M. Sternberg.
Editor, Sean Duenas.
Filmed at New Beginnings Foundation, Wall Township, New Jersey. The IgA Nephropathy Foundation was established in 2004 to find better treatments and ultimately a cure for this chronic kidney disease, which can end in dialysis and needing a kidney transplant. For more information, please visit IGAN.org. In this world of so much negative news, we need inspiration. Be Inspired is created for appreciative audiences just like you. So please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any of our upcoming inspiring stories. Be Inspired is filmed in front of a live audience. If you would like to attend a filming of Be Inspired, or if you know someone who has an inspirational story that should be shared with the world, please contact us at info@mrdproductionsllc.com. That's info@mrdproductionsllc.com.